Worship team, thank you so much. I don't know about you, but yeah. I can believe that God is good when I'm reminded by you all as you're singing. It just seems so genuine to hear your voices, and always grateful, because not all of us get to know everyone on this stage personally. Just as someone who does know these men and women personally, I just want you to know they're the real deal. They love you. They love Jesus even more than they love being musicians and worship leaders, and I think that says a lot, and I wish that weren't something that had to be questioned other places, but it doesn't have to be questioned here. So you can know that. And so thrilled. So many friends that have come back, generally speaking, some friends who are here from afar, and we're going to do everything we can today to convince you that God is calling you back to San Francisco. And everybody's like, you buy us a house here and we will. I was like, we're going to buy a church building, and if you happen to bring a sleeping bag on a Sunday and not leave till Monday, that's between you and Wilmer Raza, who's on vacation right now, so sort that out. In his great book, The Power of Habits, author Charles Duhigg writes this. He says, Keystone Habits start a process that over time transforms everything. Keystone Habits, whatever those might be, is a great book. Not a Christian book, but a great book that I think tells us how God's wired us. Keystone habits are those habits that start a process, and over time, they have the ability to transform everything. So in the book, he would say things like, hey, find that one habit that's going to lead to all the other things you want to see transformed in your life. So he might say, for some of us, the Keystone habit is if you set your alarm, it takes care of your exercise and everything else. Other people say that if you exercise, that is the Keystone habit because it will make you eat better throughout the day. I say I exercise so that I can eat badly throughout the day. So it's not a keystone habit for me, but I'm in recovery and figuring that out. But today, I want to talk to you about a habit that, believe it or not only has the ability to transform everything, but I think has the ability to transform everyone. I mean, wouldn't you want to get in on a habit or a practice that as you engaged in it, it did something to transform you, and it transformed the people around you, and it even had the possibility of transforming people you don't even know? Wouldn't you like that habit? Wouldn't the world need a little more of that habit? Because we've got some other habits that, right? So I'm going to give that to you, a number of scriptures today, but I want to begin in Proverbs Chapter 11, just two verses there, chapter 24, verse 24 and 25, and I want to ask you to stand with me. Two short verses, but they really give us this crazy insight to how things work counterintuitively in God's economy, and this crazy insight how we can participate in something that will do something for us and for the people that are on the giving or receiving end of that. So Proverbs 11, 24 and 25, it simply says this: one person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Here's a summary of those two verses. The giver gains, the withholder loses. Have a seat, and let's see if this is true. Back in 2017, I believe it was, we did an entire series that summer on the book of Proverbs, and we called it Wise Up, and I believe that can still be found in the archives somewhere. But a couple of discoveries we made in the book of Proverbs that I want to introduce you to or even reintroduce you to is Proverbs, they're not promises. They're more about probabilities. They're not about covering every exception to the rule. They're more about the rule. So when you read in Proverbs a variety of things, it's not that, hey, everyone who does A gets B, but they're about probabilities. They're about the way the world works, at least according to God. Now, I imagine everyone in this room and watching online right now, we either love math or hate math. A few of you are casual about math, but we're not going to even let you play this morning. How many of you would just raise your hand, and we really need to know this, because those of you who need math help, you probably want to watch this. Those of you who, we'll get to that. If you love math, we just raise your hand like you honestly love math. You're not boasting, you're just saying, I love math. Keep it up high, just so we can know who, okay, awesome. I'm there with you if we can put an asterisk right there. I love math except for geometry. Anybody besides me? Like, that's not math. I'm not even kidding. Your boy was the Algebra 2 Student of the Year. Yeah. And yeah, no, I mean, nothing against homeschool, but I wasn't homeschooled. You're like, well, of course you were. You're the only one in it. No. I had other people in the class. Got to geometry, I'm like, I don't know. Seems like art to me. I do not know what's going on here. I'm not interested in theorems. And so I got to revisit that this past year when my 10th grader was in geometry. I'm like, bro, I don't know. When you get back to algebra next year, I'm your guy. So I do love math, except for geometry. How many of you despise math? You just kind of hate it, you loathe it. Yep, assume none of you are accountants, and nobody's a financial planner here. Nobody's doing the church's books that hates and can't do math. Well, whether you love math or despise it, there's something you need to know, even if you don't like math at all. Math in the kingdom of God, it just works different. And it's one of those things that you have to experience, I think, to fully believe it, though I know we've been called to live by faith. And you see in this text that that's what's going on. So let me just show you normal math versus kingdom math. Normal math says this: if I give, you win and I lose, right? I had something, I gave it to my friend Minnie, she's the winner, I now have a deficit. But kingdom math says if I give, you win and I win. And listen to this one: if I refuse to give, you lose and I lose. You see, it's not a zero-sum thing like it is out in the world. It actually is it's a multiplier if we do it, and it's a divider if we don't. And again, in the summary, just 2 short verses, but I'm going to give you some more to build on. You're like, oh, Proverbs, I wonder if that's the probability. Like, Ben, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't work like that for me. The Proverbs say that one person gives freely and gains even more. Counterintuitive. Another withholds and comes to poverty or suffers loss. It's fascinating. And you're like, Ben, I know this doesn't make common sense. I'm one of those people that was good at math. I know this doesn't make common sense, but I want to remind all of us, especially if you're new here or you haven't been around in a little while, we're not ultimately after just common sense. We're ultimately after orienting our entire lives around Jesus. And so if Jesus says math in my kingdom works differently, we want to go with what he says, not even with what our wonderful 7th grade teachers taught us about math. Okay? I don't know how it works, but I've just experienced it to be true. Back in November of 2019, Epic embarked on what we've been calling the Home Initiative. The Home Initiative was going to provide funds for a down payment should we ever, I know it's not going to happen, but should we ever find property that we could buy in San Francisco. For those of you who've been under a rock the last few weeks or months, we have found property. But when we started that, it was kind of crazy, and I'm the pastor casting the vision, even I'm going really, Shauna, we're going to give to something that we don't know when it is, where it is, how big it is, all that? Because I can see these kids who want to be fed. I mean, which is it going to be? Seriously, though, at that time, Shauna and I made the largest financial commitment we'd ever made in something like that. And you might think, well, why, Ben? Do you guys just have cash stashed around your house? For any of you schemers out there, we have no cash stashed around our house, all right? Oh, you guys must have crypto. I was like, no, we don't have anything we can't explain. That just... I got a text Christmas morning, seriously, someone had sent me crypto, and I'm like, yeah. Whatever they sent me is still there. Sounds like it's lost value, but I don't know. We wanted to, by faith, trust God to be part of this historic moment because he had been so faithful over the last 10 years of our historic movement to be a church for the city of San Francisco and beyond. And guys, God provided on the back end of that commitment, without us knowing how or when, he provided in such an unimaginable way that we were able to pay our commitment off in half the time we anticipated it taking. Now, again, Proverbs are not, all of my life, it doesn't have that story. I think about it, Shauna, this just came to mind. For our wedding, I had a groomsman that could not afford to rent the tuxedo. And, we grew up in the South, so, some of you are like, Ben, when you got married, weren't you 33 like me and had a big job? No, I was 23 and not having a great job, right? So for us to get the guy's tuxedo, it was $100 at the time, and I'm dating myself. But we didn't have any extra money. That's a true story. And Shauna's car, what year was that Chevy Cavalier? Old. It was old. It broke down, literally it was about $100 to fix, and that day in the mail, our friend's check from months ago for the tuxedo came. Now, I know you have stories like that because you share these kind with me often. How does it work? I don't know. Conversely, the text says the one who withholds or holds back what they should give, they're the one who actually loses. Henry Nouwen said this, and I really like it. He said, whatever we hold on to always diminishes. Whatever we give away always multiplies. Everybody's amen and going, I don't know if I believe that. You see, here's the principle, and it's one you can take to the bank, and you've seen it even though we forget it often. The happiest people are not the ones who hold on to everything. You ever seen any miserable rich people? The happiest people are not the ones who hold on to everything. The text says one person gives freely. I want to just think about the idea of freedom for a second. Again, it works differently in God's economy than it does in the world, even freedom versus enslavement in so many ways. Like, isn't it fascinating that the things that we think would bring us into bondage actually have the power to free us? Anybody? And the things that we thought would be our ultimate freedom actually end up putting chains on us. Think about it. The idea that I've lived with, because everyone in the world is kind of inherently born with this idea, is the more I get, the happier and better my life is. Right? But that hasn't always played out like that. Here's why. A scarcity mindset shrinks your life, while an abundance mindset enlarges your life. And when you hear money today, we're not just talking money, we're talking about everything. What we do with our time, what we do with our intelligence, what we do with our wisdom, what we do with our influence. Right? So a scarcity mindset, it's always shrinking my life. You're like, Ben, what is scarcity? It's that thing within us that's constantly screaming, I am not enough and I'll never have enough. So I better hold on to what I do have. Abundance, like Seth led us earlier, and you guys know what a gift we have in Seth being here. Seth actually wrote that song. That's true, right? I'm not lying. Just abundantly more. The reason we sing that a lot around here is because it's true. It comes straight out of Ephesians chapter 3, and we want to keep declaring that. Jesus said, I've come to give you not a scarce life, but an abundant life. Not a small life, but a large life. But we're not going to define small and large like the world defines small and large. We're not going to go there. And when you think about somebody doing it freely, let me just say, wherever you are on your faith journey, we're so glad that you're here. But let me tell you what can happen over time. Over time, if we're not careful, what can happen is we simply turn following Jesus into a bunch of rules that we have to keep. And if you read the Gospels, those rules are important, but when rules become the center and Jesus isn't the center, things go bad. Okay? So the reason Jesus ends up crucified on a cross is because he wouldn't follow the rules, as he was asking people to come follow him. But if we're not careful, following Jesus becomes a bunch of have-to. So we start asking questions like this. How much time do I have to spend with Jesus and still be a Christian? Right? How much scripture do I have to read over the week to still be a Christian? How much do I have to serve? How much do I have to pray? And then how much do I have to give? Friends, could I remind you what I often forget? Following Jesus is the highest privilege of my life. How much time do we get to spend together today? Jesus, you know I've got a lot on my plate. You know I've got these kids. And God, you know the people in that congregation. But how much do we get to? How much do I get to pray for you? How much do I get to serve? Right? If this room keeps filling up, God, how much do I have to preach as we keep adding services? No. How much do I get to preach the word of God? And then how much do I get to give? Not to have to. It's a privilege. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and 9, I'm not going to read all that to you, but if you want kind of a Paul's treatise on generosity, look at those two chapters. But let me just give you a couple of scriptures out of 2 Corinthians 9, and then we'll do one from chapter 8. 2 Corinthians 9:7, Paul writes, each of you, so that would include all of us, should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. I mean, how does it make you feel when someone's giving you something like, I don't want you to have this, but here, right? Right? Your boss is like, I know we promised you this, here, right? Come on, don't do it. You know? Giving freely is better than giving reluctantly. It's for your freedom. God loves a cheerful giver. Why? Because God is a cheerful giver. And when I understand that God wants me to be a cheerful giver, then that tells me something about him. You see, some of us have this concept of God, depending on what you grew up with, or just the voices in your mind, or the church that you were raised in, or the religion you were raised in, or what your parents said to you, or someone who had a job like mine didn't tell you the truth. They said something like to you, God's disappointed in you, so you internalize that message. So you think, when God gives to you, he's doing it begrudgingly. And I'm just here to tell you today, maybe you don't need to hear anything about money today. What you need to hear is your Father in heaven chose you and adopted you because he wanted to, and he did it with a smile on his face. And if that's all you get out, go ahead. That's enough. It's sufficient. But then you read in a verse prior, 2 Corinthians 9:6, Paul says, remember this. Anytime in Scripture you see the phrase, remember this, it means you're probably prone to forget this. Okay? So he's like, remember this. Whoever sows sparingly will reap sparingly. Whoever sows generously will reap generously. Now, you know what we want to do in life, don't you? all of us, self-included, we look for the hacks where we can sow sparingly and reap generously, right? So diet pills, right? Get rich quick schemes, right? And we even want to do that in our spiritual life if we're honest. We want to spend a little bit of time in our faith and have massive results. True? I want to show up at church 1 hour a week or every other week. Can I get a witness? Come on, I'm the only one that gets a paycheck out of me and you. It's okay. I have to. No, we want to get into the flow. We want to have a generous reaping. This word in Proverbs, it says, a generous person will prosper. That word literally means make fat. And you're like, well, maybe I don't want to be generous. Different time and place, people. The idea was that someone who is generous, you wouldn't think they would be the one gaining weight because they still have access to the good things of life. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. So I'm calling this message Simultaneous Transformation. You see, generosity, whatever we want to say about it, believe about it, do with it, it has the ability to form and transform your heart and transform the hearts and lives of those around you. And catch this, what I love is that it has a chance to transform the lives of people I'll never meet this side of heaven. I want to get in on that. But I'm challenged by the challenge. Right? Anybody else? Like, I'm just challenged. Like, really, if I do, you'll take care of me and we'll be good and I'll be happier? That's not what I'm getting out there. What I'm getting out there is you better hold on to it. Especially right now. Especially, grab all you can, just hide it and hold it. I'm so glad that when Jesus saw the world that he was coming into, he didn't go, hey, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going. And I'm going to give myself to people who are going to trash me. I'm going to give myself fully, no matter what they're going to do to me. With the title, Simultaneous Transformation, here's what I mean. Generosity simultaneously brings transformation to the giver and the receiver. Right? We have a lot of one-way relationships in life, right? You don't, I do. I mean, like, hey, I'm trying to be the husband. That's a two-way relationship, just so you know. The dad thing, it's becoming a two-way relationship. But this is one where everybody wins. Or, should we not practice it, everybody loses. But how does generosity transform the giver? Let me give you a few things. And if, you may want to take notes. I don't think this is on the screen. The first way generosity transforms the giver is that it frees the giver from greed. It frees the giver who's trapped in greed. And if you look around, there's a lot of greed in our world today, even in the church world today. Number two, what generosity does to transform the giver is it moves us from storing up treasure on earth to storing up treasure in heaven. Like, then why would I want to do that? Because Jesus said in Matthew 6:21, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If you want to know what's forming your life the most, just ask, what do I treasure the most? You'll always get your answer. Always. The third reason is generosity. The act of giving teaches me that I've got to look to God as my ultimate provider, not to money as my ultimate provider. You're looking for trust and security somewhere. Where are you looking? Fourth one, pretty obvious, it makes us more like Jesus, who said, it is more blessed to give than receive. And the fifth one, every time I give, I'm just reminded of what matters most. Even when my giving hurts because it's sacrificial, I'm reminded, wait a minute, you've entrusted this to me for a short amount of time. I want to use it and leverage it in a way that makes an eternal difference. Now, how does generosity transform the receiver? Maybe more obvious, right? If I'm generous to someone who has a physical need, it meets their physical need, right? But generosity also meets spiritual needs. I hope that you start connecting your generosity to what's happening in our community and beyond. Like, I hope every time someone comes out of those baptism waters that you are clapping, yes, because you're thrilled for them, but you're also so grateful to God that you had a part in that, because you do have a part in that. Every time a small group happens, every time there's food at Alpha, every time we reimburse $10, because if people didn't have the $10 for parking today, they wouldn't be able to get to church today. Every time that happens, you're making a difference. Our kids and students are going to summer camp this summer. That's a place where a lot of transformation comes. Don't you want to come back and hear their stories and just think, oh, that's so amazing, that 7th grader, that 11th grader, that 4th grader. Jesus transformed their lives and gave them purpose while they were out at camp, and I got to play some small part in that. Don't you want to be a part of that? Don't you want to think and imagine the thousands of people who are going to walk into 414 Brandon Street and go, hey, I had a chance to be a part of that. We're not just building bathrooms and putting in an elevator, though we will be doing those things. We're creating space where people for, I think, decades will be able to be transformed by the life and presence and power of Jesus. I want in on that. I want in on that. The genesis for this series we've been doing all summer, moving forward, the path of transformation, the genesis for this goes back to November. We had an all-staff day, and what we were trying to do as a staff team is we were trying to deduce down how many elements are there necessary, like that crucial lowest amount of elements necessary for our church to experience transformation. So we were thinking about all of you beautiful people. And we were just asking ourselves, what do we believe are the irreducible things that if these happen, transformation is guaranteed? And so we're confident that these 4 elements I want to give you will bring about your transformation. The first one is this: the tangible presence of God. The tangible presence of God. Number 2, formation through rhythms and practices. Formation through rhythms and practices. I'll come back to these in a moment if you don't get them. Number 3, a deeply shared life with others pursuing Jesus. We think that's irreducible. Number 4, giving our lives away for the sake of the mission. So I'll go back through these 4, but I want to tell you what all of them have to do with generosity. So let's take the first one, the tangible presence of God. When I am experiencing the presence of God, I'm reminded of how good He is. I'm reminded that He is my provider. I'm reminded of how generous He is. And when I'm in the presence of God, guess what? I'm no longer focused on all the things I used to think were missing from my life. So my contentment grows. And when I'm more content, I'm always willing to be more generous. Always. That's why 1 Timothy 6 on generosity, he said, godliness with contentment is great gain. Number 2, probably obvious, but formation through rhythms and practices. We need practices in our lives that are going to help form us into the person we intend to become, and even more, that Jesus intends to make us. And so we need a practice, a pattern of generosity. For me, like every time I get paid, I'm going to be generous with what, and I've pre-decided. I've already made a decision on the front end, whether it's an abundant year, it's a little more of a lean year, I'm going to do this with what I receive. It's about the pattern of, hey, I'm moving it into my budget, but I'm also maybe moving it from the bottom line of my budget to the top line of my budget. It's setting up recurring or automated giving. I want to form myself in this way or allow God to form me in this way, so I've got to have intentional practices. The third one I really love, a deeply shared life with others pursuing Jesus. When you're deeply entrenched in a community like Epic, what's going to happen in the life of the time that you're there is there are going to be times and seasons where you have an abundance and others have needs and you can meet their needs, but there may even be a season, believe it or not, where you find yourself in need. And when you're deeply entrenched in a community like this, your needs will be met and you'll be able to meet the needs of other people. This happened in real time for me this morning, just as the 9 o'clock service was starting. So you know that we experienced communion today. Well, a couple months ago, I was up here, and I couldn't get the tabs open. So I'm like, listen, I never plan things too late. I tend to plan things too early. So this morning, what I did is I opened the wafer tab to prepare myself. I'm like, I'm going to take it a next step. I'm going to open the juice tab. So I was not wearing this shirt when that happened. That shirt that's now white and purple, it's in my backpack in the office. But this is pretty amazing. Sitting right where Hannah's sitting, right behind me on the second row was Nate Fahey. And Nate's like, Ben, I've got an undershirt on. So when today started, Nate put this shirt on. And now I'm wearing it. And it fits perfectly. And he's there serving coffee right now, and it's like, dude, you're not getting it back. It wouldn't be generosity if I had to give it back, right? But I was like, this is a perfect illustration. But like, what are the chances? I'm like, no, man, I'll just grab a sweatshirt. So he gives it to me. I go in the back during the first song. I'm like, this is awesome. Got my black shoes on. But when we're connected in a community, and Nate and I are close friends, but when we're connected, I know you're thinking, I wouldn't have given him my shirt. Just start wearing, if everybody just start wearing 2 shirts. But the best thing I think about being deeply connected in a community like this is that you and I can do collectively what none of us will be able to do by ourselves. You guys, last year, where half the year we weren't even meeting in person like normal times, as a church, we gave over $500,000 to the Hope Project. If you don't know, the Hope Project funds our local, national, and global partners. Our goal was $300,000, and we just blew it out of the water. Now, I brought what I needed to bring, but I could not bring everything, and nor could you. When we go to build out this building at 414 Brandon Street, and you'll hear all about this in a few months, when you'll realize, like, oh my gosh, I want to be a part of this, but I can't be the only part of this. This is the beauty of the church, isn't it? In fact, I was reading an article yesterday that someone in our church sent me by Tim Keller, who's just saying what society is even realizing. This is from a non-Christian philosopher. What people are realizing, sociologists rather, they're realizing that if the church keeps shrinking in America, just social services that are for the common good are going to shrink in America. Why? Go do your research on who founded the first universities. Go see who set up the hospitals in the world as well as our own country. There's something we can do together that we would never be able to do alone. And then the fourth one's probably just really obvious, giving our lives away for the sake of the mission. Like, we want to give ourselves away. And so, when it comes to transformation, most people don't experience maximum transformation by asking this question: what's the least I can do to be transformed? So Paul, he's kind of getting at this idea in 2 Corinthians 8:7. Listen to what he says. He says, but since you excel in everything, I know a lot of you are ambitious, so I've got one for you, Paul says. Since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in this grace of giving. A lot of us are overachievers. I'm not asking you to raise your hand, because that's the most overachiever thing ever. So have you raise your hand? And probably some of you be, I'm so overachieving, I'm making audible noises, Ben. Paul's like, hey, you want to be great at everything? I'm going to commend you in this and this and this. Hey, go be great at generosity. Decide how you're going to max out on your generosity. Start where you are, but get to the place where you're excelling in this. And I want to ask you this question that's a huge question to reflect on, and I think even write these names down or do it later. Certainly think about it. Whose generosity has paved the way for your transformation? It's a great question, because I know it's not no one. When you think about why you are who you are today, we're not focused on where you still need to go, just the good that's happened in your life, the development that's happened in your life, the opportunities that have come your way, the provision that's come your way. I know there's enough of us in this room, maybe all of us, I believe, our lives have been marked by someone else's generosity. I can't help but ask this question and think of my dad immediately, most generous person on the planet that I know. Always giving stuff away so that we could have better than him, and is still doing that. I spent some time with him this week. That's a pretty rare occasion, and just reminded, my gosh, this man's generosity has marked my life. I think about men and women in this community who out of the blue offered to do something that I didn't even think they knew about, marked my life. I think, of course, about Jesus Christ and his loving me and giving himself up for me, marked my life. Who's marked yours? I mean, think about it. This is a fun weekend here at Epic. We've got a lot of people who, I don't know, it was like homecoming weekend at Epic, but we have a lot of people who used to be at Epic who are now back. And if you guys were praying coming into the weekend, God, if they're still there, we'll move back. We are still here. I'm looking at my friends. They're like, yeah, some of them are like, we'll sit close. So I got you. But aren't you glad? How many of you, this is really fun, we didn't do this at the last service, how many of you would say you've shown up at Epic for the first time since 2020? Like you never came to Epic before 2020. Anybody just raise their hand? Yeah, keep them up high. Come on. Come on. Awesome. We love that you're here. And if you've experienced transformation ever in our church in any kind of way, know that there are people who showed up before we knew you were going to be here so that when you came, transformation could take place. Now imagine us creating transformation for the future. A verse that you'll hear a lot anytime we're preaching about transformation, and you probably know it well, is Romans 12:2, that says, do not be conformed to this pattern of this world, but be what? Transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you'll know and be able to test and approve God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. This is true in almost every area of our lives, before we can get transformed in that area, we have to have our thinking about that thing transformed. Does that make sense? And so here's a great question. When you're wanting to know what areas of my life might Jesus want to transform, here's a great clue. Really good question. Here's what you ask. In what area of my life does Jesus think and believe differently than I do? Remember, our vision is we're trying to orient our whole lives around Jesus. So what we need to ask is, what topic or what category or what area does Jesus believe differently than I do? And so for today's topic, here's the question. What does Jesus believe about generosity that I don't yet believe? What does Jesus believe about this topic that I don't or you don't yet believe? Let me tell you, this isn't always true, but I have to admit it's sometimes true. Here's something that I don't always believe that Jesus believes. I don't always believe that God's going to take care of me in the future. Jesus always believes that. It's not that it's always absent, but there are times for me when I look at what I'm trying to do, when I look at what our church is trying to do, when I feel responsible to lead us into God's future. It's like, God, we are biting off a lot. Are you sure you're going to take care of us? Jesus has never wondered. Maybe for you, you believe that honestly, if you're just true, selfishness is better than selflessness. You would never say it out loud, but you believe different than Jesus about that. Jesus believes that it's more blessed to give than receive. Do you believe that? Jesus believes abundance mindset's the way to live. You might believe that a scarcity mindset's your only option. It's just a great question to ask anywhere, isn't it? It's the first time I've ever taken this publicly, but I think because of what our vision is, like, where does Jesus believe differently than I do? What does he believe about marriage differently than I do? What does he believe about family differently than I do? What does he believe about what I should do with my time differently than what I think I should do with my time? What does he believe about how he can trust God that I might not yet fully trust God for? I think it's a really, really good question. And remember, Romans 8:32, he who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? All things. All things. You see, the God, I've had to remind myself, I'm about to confess. See, I'm so just unfiltered now. I'm about to make a confession. It doesn't involve you, Sean. I know for that I'd have to get permission. What I know for sure is that God has provided this space down the street. No doubt. And yet, out of the other side of my mouth, I keep going, God, are you going to take care of the renovations? God, you know there's some time overlap where we're going to pay mortgage and a lease. Are we going to be okay? And I've got to remind myself, Ben, you know he's provided this. Are you really going to question whether or not he'll provide that? Doesn't mean I throw wisdom to the side, right? We need to be wise. We need to be creative. We need to get the best brains on this project. But he has shown his faithfulness. I need to quit questioning it. So do you. At Epic, you'll hear two things over and over and over. The first one is this: wherever you are today, start there. You know why? That's the only place you can start, and you're so welcome to start there. At Epic, we're not about what's happened up until this point and consumed with who you have been or who you used to be. We're very much interested, though, in who you are today and who you're becoming. So today, wherever you are, start there. But the second thing we say over and over again, wherever you are today, take your next step. So let me give you a few broad categories, and we'll close this thing out. Just real broad application. Number one, in any area of your life, if you've been giving nothing, just start giving something. Doesn't even have to be to this church or a ministry. Just start doing something generously. Right? So nothing is where you are today. This isn't about shame or guilt. Just start something. Number two, if you've been giving something occasionally, start giving proportionally and consistently. Consistently means that I'm going to do it every time I get paid. Proportionally means choose a percentage. Choose 3%, 5%, 7%. I would try to work up to that threshold, 10% giving. But just be consistent with it. Decide on the front end. And number three is something we started doing as a couple back in 2011. If you're at that threshold giving place, start making a plan to give above and beyond. Start making a plan to give above and beyond. Sean and I started that process ourselves in 2011, and on my life plan, a lot of you know I operate out of a life plan, I have a percentage that I want to get to. We're not there yet, but I want to get to, and I'm holding myself and ourselves accountable to that. Now, let me give you the fourth one that may be the hardest one. You're like, wow, what's going to be more challenging than that? For a lot of you who are like me, the hardest one is for you to say, hey, Ben, those three don't apply to me, but here's what does. I'm in a season of great need. I have nothing to give, but I need to receive. I don't know about you, but that is the hardest of the four for me. Anybody else? Some of you are like, no, Ben, just give me. Just keep giving. I mean, I'm the guy that when my friends go out of their way and they're crazy generous with a birthday gift, I feel like, right? Just a little bit embarrassed, like that's too much. I mean, secretly, I'm glad for it, but, I don't really like opening gifts in front of friends. Anybody else? For two reasons. One, I do feel kind of embarrassed. The other is, what if they got me the wrong thing? Because everybody knows Pilgreen doesn't hide his expression on his face from what he But I do feel that way. I also find myself doing this at times. I find myself at times trying to talk people out of their extravagant generosity. Right? Sometimes it's like a person who I kind of know their stage of life. I was like, that's just too much. That's what I want to say. Sometimes I've said it. Sometimes I've said it to you. You're like, no, Ben, I feel like led to do this, and I'm trying to talk you out of what God's trying to talk you into. Bad pastor. This happened recently in the month of May. A lot of you know our oldest, Elijah, graduated from high school, and we threw a party for him. By that I mean Shauna took care of everything, and I grilled the meat. And he invited the people he wanted to invite, and all of them who could come, they came, and others said things to him. And what was wild is to see what people said to him about him and the gifts that they gave to Elijah that day, and it really blew me away. And what I wanted to do, just my human instinct, I wanted to talk them out of their generosity. I really did. I wanted to say, hey, that's just too much. It's just high school. It's too much. But then they began to speak about the privilege of investing and being a part of his life. And I thought, Ben, why would you rob them of their gift of generosity? And so you know what I quit doing? I quit trying to talk them out of their generosity. Instead, I prayed this: God, could their generosity mark the rest of his life? Could it mark the rest of his life? Has the generosity of Jesus marked your life? I think that's where we've got to start. And again, I love that prayer. Jesus, save me from a life without you. Bring me into a life with you. Start using that a lot. I think that's so appropriate for all of us, especially those of you who are stepping into faith for the first time. For the rest of us, what about your generosity? Maybe for you it's not to be generous. Maybe it's to go, hey, I have a need. And so you email will@epicsf.com or someone on our team, and you just say, hey, this is the biggest challenge I've ever taken. To say, hey, my job didn't work out like I thought it was going to work out. I have some help I need. But I know there's a step for all of us today. Do you want to live a life that's shrinking or one that's enlarging? Let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for your example. Thank you that you loved us and you gave yourself for us. Thank you that we can trust you. Jesus, today, for every person, myself included, what area on the topic of generosity do we not think like you or believe like you or practice like you? Thank you for being gracious and gentle with us, but would you adjust our thinking? Would you do this Romans 12:2? Would you transform our mind? We know how the world is doing it these days. We know the scarcity mindset. We know the fear that everyone's being driven by. We don't want to be conformed to that pattern. We want to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. So would you renew our minds? Jesus, I'm thinking about the men and women whose generosity has marked my life. I'm also imagining the hundreds or maybe thousands of lives that we will get to transform individually and especially collectively. God, thank you that generosity has been present in Epic from before this church began. Thank you for those churches and hundreds of individuals who came before this was even a thing, and they helped make it a thing. God, thank you for those who've paved the way for us to be in this space, for our kids to go to camp, for small group leaders, for staff to oversee major significant areas at our church. God, to be able to pay for this space. God, all of the things that have been provided through this community. God, we just say we want more. We want more trust. We want more generosity. We want to see transformation in our own lives and the lives of those here, God, through our partnerships locally and globally. God, would you speak really clear to us about what step you want us to take? In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to ask you to stand as the band gets ready to lead us in a response song. A lot of questions, a lot of principles, a lot of thoughts, I imagine, I hope at least, as we take this with us. But kind of the big thought is, hey, who are we going to line our lives up with? And we're going to sing to that end.